Yeah, I was talking about my time in Greenland, and I talked in the first part about the years 2008 to 10, not exactly, but about my experiences and impressions in the beginning. And of course, just a part of it, because every day is an experience in life that has and can have many impressions, and that we forget a lot of. And we have something we remember and things we never forget. And one of the things I never forget was one icy day where I was going out home from the school, and it was totally like a glacier outside. Also, the stairs, it had rained and then turned to ice, and it was so cold. It was in late November, and I didn't know how to get down the stairs, and I didn't have these special heels to walk on, and I didn't have the special boots, and so I had to go down on all four for a very very long strip, like 100 meters or so, from the school stairs and all the way down the hill to the left to get going onto the road. And I was really keen that nobody should see me because it would have looked very funny. But then halfway there, I was partly on all four and partly just bending over and walking very close to the earth. So if I should fall, I shouldn't break anything. And then two of my or three of my pupils in class, they saw me. They just came by and they stopped there, and one of them started laughing and saying, "Do you need help to get on?" And I just laughed and said, I can manage," and started like to get up on my feet, and not showing that I couldn't, and waited, took a few steps, but otherwise waited until they passed by. And that was for me a very special moment up there, and they couldn't but tell everyone else about it at school. So I became a laughing issue, and it was a very friendly laughing issue, not the way you can find in some other societies, also in the Danish one, where you can really be be a target for a kind of not so friendly comments if you are awkward or weird or have anything that's out of normal. That's a big problem in Western societies, that they have up to one third of the pupils who get negative comments. They experience mobbing, and that's a very hard thing to live with also later, and that can give you scars for life. And I had some of these when I was a young boy in Danish schools, because I was dark haired and the only one. And I was different. I had a different name that was strange and awkward, and maybe a name that clinged negative in their ears and all that. And I had a different community and culture. I was from a Muslim culture, and that's not easy. I can tell you, it's just beneath the surface, that kind of rejection and non acceptance, and the feeling of those are the sons of of people we're not really, not all people, but I'm saying it's widespread in a culture like this. And so when you came to Greenland, you find that it's not like that at all. They told me from the beginning, we laugh, but we laugh friendly with each other, not at each other. And of course, sometimes they also laugh at each other and can also be mean. But mostly, I really felt that friendly way of doing it. So it wasn't felt so bad. And these episodes repeated themselves many times, and so I got the nickname Mr. Bean, because I could also in class sit, and if something surprised me, I could open my eyes wide open, and they say, "Oh, do that again," and I do it again, and they say, "Oh, that's exactly like Mr. Bean. You're doing it." I said, "Oh, wow. Well, if anybody would notice me, I would maybe make the new role." And so I played along on these jokes, and that opened also broke the ice and opened ways to more and more friendships in the town, and both with students and the grown-ups, not taking things too personally or seriously, or just being cheeky or something, just accepting, like. And that's something I picked up in the European lifestyle, especially the Danish and British one, that you can laugh at yourself and you can laugh with others at yourself. It's okay. Maybe you are funny at moments and you do things that's out of order, and why not? While we can go to the southern cultures, that would be a problem with the honor. I'm not only speaking about Muslim cultures as they usually do. It's always the Muslims, but it's also Southern European cultures like Italian and Greek and the Sicilian and so on. They don't like being laughed at, and they take it personally, and they can like feel that's an insult. That's just cultural differences that you can find several places. I am not saying that these Southern culture can't laugh at themselves. It's just not the usual thing to do. You respect people and you don't laugh at them and their face, and you do not expect them to play along a joke where they laugh at you as well. But that's more common in the Northern cultures, and that's a way to get around things and becoming a friend with people where they see, well, this is a relaxed guy, there's no problem, he's not taking everything as an insult or personally. And I guess for some time some people were afraid of me because some told me that we were scared of you. And I remember one of my friends, the teacher, told me his mom, very old lady, when she heard I came to that town and was a teacher, she said, well, watch out, he could be dangerous, keep away of his way. And he told her, he's my best friend. We take walks and we speak philosophy and about music. And I tell him about my friend who is from the Ahmadiyya movement in India. And it's a kind of Muslim on the periphery of the Islam movements. And so he's like trying to find the common footsteps with me, and I'm doing the same the other way. And he tells his mother, listen, this guy is friendly and he's my friend. We take walks and we have good time. And that's what happens sometimes in life, that people can like see you as a monster. We see it all the time in adventure movies and in stories that people who are being demonized, when people get to know them, like Beauty and the Beast, they find them the most good-hearted people they have met. I'm not saying I'm the best good-hearted man, but I'm saying that they were surprised that I wasn't that evil man that everybody sought me out to be. And that makes a lot of difference. And suddenly that changes also people's affections for you. That it's like they break something in their mind and say, well, that's not fair. He's actually normal or more gentle than we thought of, and that makes it like the beginning of a good understanding and friendship. And so was my journey in Greenland, a journey of that kind of personal friendships and understanding and relation. And then I left them after 2 years, but came back several years later. I missed it, and I also needed it. I'm not saying that. It was also a way of getting out of hard times, and that's something I'm thankful to and at. The Greenlanders should be also glad that they can offer a safe haven for different people. And when I was there, I actually heard about several other persons who had fled their countries to come to Greenland. There was a guy I was told about who had been at that school before me, and he was an extreme left wing or extreme right wing. I can't remember. He had some political ideologies and he carried them with him and found no place for them. So he fled to Greenland and lived there. And I knew some other people who just wanted to get out of the rush and the puff and the problems in the normal society. They couldn't recognize themselves. Several persons of the Danish origin I came to work with later were very, very left-wing people who couldn't find society going in the way they liked it to go, or like reflecting their ideals. And so they lived in Greenland for many years, maybe the rest of their life. And once they have established a community there, a small community, they don't want to leave it again. And so I found many people, both Danes and Greenlanders, who could understand and relate to a person who also was fleeing something. And later on, I came to say, that was my theory anyhow, that there are four kinds of people who comes to Greenland and tries to live there, especially from Denmark. There are these awkward people who doesn't fit in society, and I met several of these as well. There are some people who I knew a man who worked in the high school. He was very strange. He could suddenly just run with all his might, just to get from one place to another. And when you ask him, he said, no, I'm just exercising. And he didn't do it because he was in a rush. He do it regularly, and people started noticing that. So there are some like strange nuts sometimes who end up in Greenland, and that also affects the Greenlanders. And then there are these opportunists from Denmark who can see that they can get better chances there, or they can like feel the superiority of the Danish background up there, because then they will be a part of the Danish community. And don't tell me it doesn't exist. It's there. And history will talk about it, even though they deny it now. It is existing, and there are these superior people who just keep to their own groups and try to play superior over the Greenlanders and the other Danes who are not part of that group. So we are back to that Animal Farm of George Orwell, the pigs who wants to control everything with the other animals, and some animals are out of it. And so it exists, I'm telling you. And they find opportunity there. Maybe they have friends or people who know them, say, come up here, and here we can control things behind the lines. And they understand each other. I am basically raised in Denmark. I understand the mentality, and I know that's how they think and do. And they can talk to each other in ways that others doesn't understand, just to keep that superior level. And they can exclude people they don't like and keep them out. And that's all over the world. I'm not saying it's only the Danes, but especially because the Danes always talk about equality and fairness and not treating people that way. This is a rooted problem they have had in Greenland for many, many years. And the Greenlanders know it and oppose to it from time to time. I came to learn that the Greenlanders, when they talk to each other and with people they trust, they have another language than they have when they speak to the Danes. And about the Danes, they call them the Kashlunat. That means the people with the very thick eyebrows. And maybe some of the Danes who came in the old days had the very thick eyebrows. And so when they say it in that way, I came to understand the connotations of the words. When they say kashluna, it's like a disgusting way of saying it. And now we're mentioning the language. I have to speak about the language. I started learning the language as well. But let me just finish that part of how people come up there. So there are these persons who are small nuts and socially awkward who ends up there. There are the opportunists, and there are the people who are on adventure up there, people who's just seeking to find new experiences. And then there is the fourth part, and people who are there because they are political refugees. They are very okay socially, and they are not so awkward and doesn't belong to a special club or something. But they are there because they are political refugees. They are running away from something in the political life. It's a kind of not direct persecution, but in a way a kind of exclusion. And that was exactly that part I was part of. And that's why I could manage the other parts. I could like get through with stuff. And then one of these things I had to relate to from the early beginning was the language. And I don't know why I'm speaking of this so late. It's just, this should have been in the beginning. But well, that's the way I speak, and that's my thoughts. I'm just letting my thoughts run in all directions, and I hope it's okay for whoever ends up wanting to listen to this and not being run away from it. The Greenlandic language is one of the most difficult in the world, and it's very peculiar in many ways. It's a language of a mix of some Asian-rooted old sort of language from the Mongolian area of Asia, and from the northwest of America, Canadian area, and that's the kind of a mix they've got there in the language. So you can feel it's like they have this Turkmenic and Mongolian way of speaking, and they have at the same time this Inuitic and Western Asian way of Western American way of. I'm not speaking American like English, but the old American, the way the Indians spoke. So I guess it's a mix, and that makes sense when you look at the history, because you had these tribes who early on took the trips from Alaska and from Canada and into Greenland. They found passages, or maybe when the ice froze at winter, or maybe, as the theory is, that the globe was closer to each other. Maybe the the continents were closer and there were passages in a different way. And so they came to this icy island and pulled themselves to live there. And another people came from the east, walking over from the northeastern of Russia and Svalbard and these islands up there, and then arrived at the eastern coast of Greenland and met somewhere on the southwestern coast, a bit higher up than Nuuk, as I recall from the history. And that makes sense that they had two languages that maybe over time merged into one, or maybe at this time today we have the Eastern Greenlanders very different from the Western Greenlanders in their culture and also in the way they use the language. It's Greenlandic, okay, but it's also a kind of Greenlandic that's not typically the West Coast Greenlandic that's became the majority's language. It's another way of speaking Greenlandic with other words for some things and other way of saying things. So there is two cultures, at least in the Greenlandic language, but I discovered later that there are many dialects, at least 5 main big dialects. And, going over to the political level, they had difficulty in integrating all this because they all wanted to keep on to their local dialects. So how do you do when you want school books and you want a centralized administration? And so they chose the West Greenlandic way of saying things, the area around Nuuk and southwards and a bit northwards. That became the formal Greenlandic language. And that was the language I had to relate to. And I actually started learning it, but it was very difficult and the words kept slipping. But I kept trying. So when you say my name is, you say Uwanga Atekapunga. My name is. And up there, when they call a person, they put an I on the name. It's like if you want to say my name is Ahmed or Akmi, you say Akmiti. And so I was called Akmiti. And many people just of my friends say, Akmiti, Sulapit, what are you doing? And they started teaching me some words, and I started speaking with my friends about them, and I had to get the grammar right, and it was a little difficult. And so you get many words like imak for water, and kamak for the moon, and akusinek for the street or road, and kakka for the mountain. And I started listening to some of the songs and participating when we sang at the school. And there's this very, very beautiful song I still love and always loved. It's from the Narsak area, written by a local and made as a song later. It starts like this. Pavo nga kakamu nueru supunga. And so it goes on, and I loved it, and I loved the melody, and it just touched my heart. And when I start learning what it meant that I'm going to the top of the mountain, I'm going to look at the view. Kekatat avatini takuhlugi kangahlui takuhlugi timinitud. Ta 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 ra 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 la 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 pa ra 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 la la. It was a beautiful song. I loved it, and there was many other very beautiful songs as well. I started relating to and learning, and so I got this language connection, and even saying a few words can give you a lot of credit because they know it's a very difficult language, not easy to learn or put together. Sometimes the same word has 3 meanings, and the same word can be used in different variations in different sentences. So they started explaining to me that you have to look at the context, and that's why the Greenlanders doesn't interpret things immediately. Like if you're saying some sentence in Greenlandic, you have to wait and listen to the context to understand in which way the word is used there. Unfortunately, I had these books and all these writings, and it's not on the table now, so I don't want to give any examples that's not totally correct on this issue. But one of the funny things they started laughing at is was when I was say when you say you can say quyanak, that means thank you. And notice it's the qa, quyanak, with the qa, the deep vocal. And you can say kuyanak, and in the slang language of the South, that means let's get together, and or if I can say it with English slang, it's let's fuck. And it was very funny, and I just could relate to that. What can you do other than laugh at it? And sometimes you started doing it on purpose if you want to make a joke with someone and say kuyanak. And the lady would shake her head, say, "No, no, no, no! Don't be such a, don't she's be what can you say? Don't be such uh, a rod or yeah, a naughty man." And so we could have fun and laugh and all that. Um, and so and so New Year came, and I didn't like the fireworks because. My war experience left a trauma in me that so I tried to avoid it, but I was there on the distance, and I was invited to also some colleagues home, and her mom, who was secretary at the school, was very beautiful, unforgettable, and all these meals. And I have to talk about the meals because what do Greenlanders actually eat? Well, they eat basically the food that's in the supermarket, the Danish food today, and they eat like any Westerners would do, a mix of bread, potato, and then meat, and some sauce on the side, or bread and cheese, and some kind of boiled meat in the morning, like ham or chicken or some kind of liver, and so on. So it's basically, and then the butter and the jam and all that. So it's very Western influence. But when they go to the special occasions, like if there is a birthday, you have to attend. You don't have to attend, but you're welcome to attend, and people usually attend. It's beautiful, and you can give the boy or the girl who has birthday, give her some money. That's all okay. You don't need to find a present. They like to get the money because they can buy whatever they like later, and then you get in, and the house is filled with this aromatics. Smell of dried fish and seal, and if they have whale or they have reindeer and sheep. The south where I was rich with sheep farming, so we had this very fresh and very tasty sheep. And sometimes they could get reindeer from the north, or maybe somebody had shot a small whale, and they could rush to the harbor to buy some, and we could leave the school sometime just to buy the whale meat, because that's not something that happens every day. So I remember one day they shot an ice bear, and that bear was dead, and we heard about it. I was in class, and I'm not used to such things. So somebody knocked on the door and said, "Nano sisami." It means that there is a an ice bear, not an ice bear. There is a bear they have shot at the harbor. That we can see, and we all rushed out, and the school was empty, and all the classes went down to see. And I took a picture with that with that bear at that time, small one. But in those areas, you can have bears attack your huts if you're living a bit separate from the village, or the village is in an area where the bears can't find good food. They can sometimes be bold enough to get closer, and I've been told stories about people who just looked out of their hut window and they saw a bear standing out there. So they're always ready with a gun and with a saber and with something to fight with or to kill it with. And they usually call the fisherman who comes rushing with the dogs and the sledges and kill those bears, and they know how to do it. And I got to understand that even more when I went north to Ilulissat later and Sisimiut, and they start talking about how they actually, when they're out on the ice for many days, how they actually do to keep the bears out. Anyhow, back to the food. I was thrilled with that aroma, and there was a kind of several fruits and tea and coffee, so it was actually very homey, even though it's a different culture. And they were dressed in that Greenlandic, very beautiful pearl dresses, Not all of them, because they can give you a lot of heat. It was very functional in the old days because the weather was cold, no heaters and all that. But the woman tells me sometimes, oh, it's so hot in here in these clothes, but they have to walk in them in the special occasions, especially at church, or when a kid is baptized or confirmed, or um, uh, at any birthday occasion or wedding, and something like that. So they have these pearl knitted dresses that can be seen online on many pictures, very beautiful and very colorful, and they are also adopted from Hollandic and Netherlandic and other cultures, and mixed with some Greenlandic skin and bear skin and all that. Anyhow, it's a big occasion to come, and then you can find this table rich of many different cakes and food, and you can take what you like and sit and talk. And sometimes it's overcrowded because it's small houses, and they usually never open a window. I don't know why, but they're just not used to it. I remember I always opened the window, especially when I was raised up in Denmark, and even more when we had times in the Middle East, in Lebanon, because that's the way you do it. You open the windows, you get some fresh air in, and you get some circulation. But opening the window up there, that can make people feel cold very quickly, and maybe they are just preserving the heat. That's a cultural thing that has been in their culture for many centuries, that the heat is very precious. And as I said in the first episode of this, that if you go back in time, you find them living in these very small huts where it can be cold. There is no isolation. There is only this small heat they can get from small logs, or from what can you say, not the meat of not the meat of the animals, but not the skin, not the meat, but the fat of the animals, and so on. And so they had to keep in their clothes and stay tight to keep warm. And maybe that's what have been going on. I don't know. Nobody explained it, but that's my guess. And so you could sit there, could be over warm, and I have problems with my lungs. So if I sit in a place with no air, I can quickly feel it. And it could be overcrowded, but very nice. You can sit there and talk to some people, or walk a bit around, and you can find someone you know. Usually you do, because everybody knows each other there, or you can get to know somebody new in these places. And so you make an impression, and you sit and you talk, and you thank for the food. Qoyanak, and they say Qoyanak isavutit, thank you because you came in. Kaffe mit qabtu gut, we have kaffe mik idai, we have kaffe mik today. So isanniyarit, get in or come in and have some food. And then you say to the one who has birthday, you say pishluarit. And if you have a present, you say takanna. That means here you go, or please accept this present, takanna. And they say the same if they want to invite you to food. They say takanna, nerinniyarit, have something to eat, tikishluari, welcome. And so these are the environments up there. The food on special occasions are very, very good, and a good experience. And then they also have these dried different type of seal and fish, and using the dried food and salted food is very good because it makes it last longer, but it can be hard to chew on, and you need some time. And I've seen several fishermen just sucking and chewing on these small fish or small meat pieces, and that's to get the energy and to get the proteins out of them. And that's the way they got about. And I very quickly learned and said many times that you people have had a genius for survival up here. You are clever people. I know today they see you as a small Inuit minority who's what you call it, endangered species and all that, and indigenous people, but backward in your culture and not following the Danish progress and all that. But you adapted well to your environment with the means you had at that time. And that's exactly it, that humans adapt with the means they have. at their disposal. So that's why we see cultures, they grow differently in different places in the world. And we see they use the stuff they have around them. So when you go to the farmers and people with a lot of farmland, you see different cultures than when you go to a place where the people were hunters or lived in the mountains and or near the sea. So we are affected by the culture and nature. That's our culture is affected by the nature and how we can tame it or use it or adapt to it so we can survive. And in this harsh environment up there, I don't even know how they got to make their bear skins so they don't freeze to death, and they can stand outside beside that hole and fish for hours, very very quiet and very patiently waiting for that seal to come up and get some air, and they have only one chance striking it in that hole. If they miss, the whole family may be starving or maybe losing the food for a week. So it's not an easy task at all. It's a big responsibility. It's a way of life that really needs some basic skills, and those skills were beginning to get lost. I remember at the time when I got there, 2008, but maybe 10, 20 years before, they started shifting. The younger generations were, of course, more interested in the internet and gaming and fast food and all the modern stuff, and going more and more away from the traditional way of life, and not going hunting the same way as before, or learning the skills of being out on the ice or detecting the animals and all that. So only few were taken out also from school to follow their parents on hunting trips and fishing trips. But now they become more and more aware again that they have to give this to the later generations, because it's both culture but also skills. But most of them, like many places in the world, they are losing the old ways of hunting and living. I have seen it in the Gulf countries. Like if you look at the grandparents' generation down there, you can see they knew how to drive the camels or the horses, or go out hunting and living in the desert, or walking by for many days. And the younger generation, it's the fast cars and fast foods, and they know nothing about all that other stuff. They order everything with a click on the internet, and they are expecting that everything will be there and the bank account will always be filled. And the same with Greenland. Greenland could be a very rich country. I used to joke and say to them, "You are the ice sheiks." They used to laugh at that. Say, "Yeah, you are just like the sheiks in the Middle East, but they are desert sheiks. You are ice sheiks, because your continent is very rich." And they had also periods where they just lived on a desert with nothing in it. And now you are living on an ice desert with nothing in it, but beneath it, you have a lot of riches. And if that could get out, you will be the ice sheiks. You will be the very rich people in the world, and you will do whatever you like. And you will have a lot of money on your accounts, and people would yearn to satisfy you. And they liked that talk, and I believed in it and still do. And that's what's going on with all these mining projects that's been delayed because of economical problems, and sometimes political and administrative problems. I'm not sure it's all only economics, because I know of two big businessmen who were very, very ready to dig. They're geologists, and they knew a lot about how to do stuff, but they got hindrance and hindrance and hindrance. So I got more and more aware that maybe there is also a political side to it, and that's not good. It's cynicism, and it's bad. And how can the Greenlanders do about this? Because even their politicians have not the abilities to break free. And that's also something I noticed over the years, that the Danish politicians are, the Greenlandic politicians are like two groups. It's like they are more than two groups, but they have mainly two big parties or groups. The ones who are traditionally social democrats and more leftist, and some minor liberal-winged politicians. And if you look at them and learn to how they think and listen to them, you will find that they sometimes feel this inferiority complex towards the Danes, and they don't want to push too hard to break out, and they can't push always for what they want. So they are somehow controlled behind the line. I know somebody won't like I'm saying this, but this is I know it, and they can sometimes say it, but not so much in public. And and so sometimes they don't get through with their projects or with their true ideas as they like it. And so a third group emerged from that, a group that's very nationalistic and very anti-Danish, and got a lot of votes and grew stronger and stronger over the years with some popular politicians. I've had his grandkid at school, this guy, and I met him once to one occasion where his son-in-law had some birthday party for his daughter, and I went there, and there was the granddad, who was the leader of that political party. And that's another thing in Greenland. You get to meet almost everybody. If not in the towns, then you meet them in the airports. Everywhere you go, you're gonna meet people at those crossroads, because the weather doesn't allow you to travel very far. Sometimes you go from this small town like Nasak, where I lived. If you want to go to let's say to Nuuk, you have to go first to the airport strip in Narsarsuaq, and there you could strand for 2 or 3 days because the weather is bad or the technical problems on the plane. And if the weather isn't bad where you are, it could be bad up north, because there are a huge area, 800 kilometers, where the weather can be totally different. And so you could strand there for 2, 3, 4 days in that ghost hotel, as people called it. And they were afraid. And that's another trait I found out about the Greenlandics, learning to know them. They are very afraid of ghosts, and they believe in ghost stories. And sometimes they gather in the evenings to tell ghost stories, and then they can't sleep. I remember I was traveling with some teachers one time to a course to learn about some pedagogical issues, and we stranded at that hotel. And next day, one of these lady teachers told me I couldn't sleep. What happened? And she said, I went to sleep in my friend's room because we gathered to talk about the ghost stories. And then it affected her, so she couldn't sleep alone in that room. And they truly believe that there are ghosts or wandering spirits that can come and touch people or maybe hurt them. And it's not surprising for me. I've been like, as a person interested in religion, and learned religion very early, and learned about also occult and mystical ways. It's not strange to hear about these things, and that there could be being, or there could be another type of contact with some spheres or being or psychological what can you say, effects that can have an impact on people's life. And I think that's what they sometimes try to depict in the Tupilaks, where they depict these very ugly pictures. And once I was participating in a mask dance, and that's exactly what they do. They put on coloring on their face and head, and take on some strange clothes, and they change their mouth and way of talking, and they come to resemble these spirits, or these ugly beings. And some of them are meant to be they mean they are like loners who wander out in the desert, in the ice, and in the fields, in what you call it, in the hills, and never return, or return from time to time. They are very much loners, and there are two types. There are the Inuit and the Kivittok. The Inuit can be very friendly. They're just loners who can't stand being with people anymore. They just have to be with their superior spirit out there, what we in the Arabic culture call the jinn, that's in contact with people from the inside of their life. And these beliefs are widespread in many cultures, but have been worn out in many European Western cultures, so they don't relate to them anymore. And the Kivittok are the dangerous ones, who can be infected by some evil spirit and evil way, and they can actually hurt people because they are not aware of what they are doing, or they are maybe they are psychologically disturbed. And so they believe in that, and in the ghost stories that fills a lot. And they can also be scared of a fly, because until recently they didn't have flies up there, but because the weather has been changing and the ice is melting. And that's what the captain told me when we went on that trip I told about in the first part, to the inland ice. He said, the ice used to be all the way out here just 10 or 20 years ago, and it's melting. So a lot is changing in Greenland, also with fast pace. And some believe it will become a green land again. It will be a place where people will find safe haven. And why not? If the rest of the earth is gonna be too hot, down around the equator, unlivable, and if we're gonna nuke each other, or viruses will take over, and or robots or something like that, people are gonna need to find some other places. And in the process of the heating and heating up of the world, some other places who are too cold will become available and more livable, and have the conditions where people can move to. So I can see it for my inner eye that Greenland can become overcrowded at one time and at one point if such things, cataclysmic events and catastrophic events, happen in the world in wide scales. Besides, it's with the developing technology, Greenland could also be a place where you could build um, for whole nations. You can take, like Noah, a group of each nation and put them up there on the ice just for security. You can take the Indians and the Chinese and Pakistanis, and you just go all over the earth, and the Africans and Congo people, and Tanzanians, and Europeans and Arabs and Israelis and Jews, and everyone take a part of each nation, and make settlements up there to secure the future of humanity's diversity and cultures in case of a big catastrophe. Or else maybe just it will develop as a living area where people will voluntarily move to if they have money or ability to get there, because it will be more and more accessible with time. But for the moment, it's accessible more and more for the small insects and flies, and they have very big, not very big, but they have bigger flies than the ones I know from Denmark. And usually they are very lazy flies, so they don't fly a lot, but they like just walk up and down the window, and suddenly they're dropping dead on the window's carm, and they can fill the area. And if they see a spider, these kids, they run away, they scream. And I was really scared first time I heard that. Someone just screamed in the classroom, what's going on? I thought something had happened. And it was just a fly that was flying around her face. And she ducked under the table, and the others ran away. Said, hey, come on, guys, have you never seen a fly before? We're afraid, they said, we're scared of this. And so I had to kill it. And so, or find a way to get it out. The same happened with this very, very small spider. They don't have spiders up there at all, very small ones. And so, an asyak, that's a spider, and nivyak, nivigak, that's a fly. Nivyak is a name, but nivigak is the fly, and the spider, asyak. So yeah, that's part of also the culture in Greenland, the ghost stories, and being scared of these things. So they scare easily, some of them. At the same time, I also saw some people who are scared of nothing. They could be out in the wilderness for days and say they enjoy it, and go kill an iceberg, or do something very wild, and they get scared of nothing. Some of the more tragic events up there is also the shooting. Sometimes a man who's drunk or affected by some drugs can take a gun and start shooting on the street. It happened in the town I came to, not while I was there, but some years before, and he killed some people on his path. It was a big tragedy for such a small community. And they also believe in a way, a kind of shamanic belief that they can protect themselves from the evil spirit by some people who has a bit of stronger power they can relate to, the shamans. They are not in a formal way anymore. You don't find these shamans, but you find people who practice shamanic beliefs and shamanic ways. And I met one of these once, and they can like try to relate to your psyche, or try to affect you, or something like that, in a good way. And they have certain ways of meditating and like bringing themselves into that ecstasy or state. And they also like have these beliefs in the stories that when a person dies, his soul will leave, but his name has to go on. It's like his memory and identity will have to go on to a newborn. So if like an old uncle is going to die right now, and a lady is gonna give birth soon to a girl or a boy, they will try to give him or her the name of that person, a male for male, of course, and a woman for woman. But they will try to do that, and so you find in the same names going again in the generation, and they have sometimes very beautiful and strange names. What can I remember? Well. أقلو أقلوق أقسيق نيفياق نيفياسياق. Such kind of names are very Greenlandic and typical, and they used to call their names by their girls and boys by them. There are many, and I'm sorry, I'm not really remembering more, but I knew a lot of names and a lot of people. And some of them have more Danish names and combined names, like you can be called Gert Ole, or you can be called Hans Fredrik, something like that. It's like the king's names in Denmark, or the usual names, or the old names from the Bible. And then I met a guy who was actually called Ishmael, and that was a very strange coincidence. He was on the football team in Nasak as well. Always drunk, that poor guy, very small guy, but very friendly, but always drunk. Even sometimes when he's playing football, you could smell him and you can know he's a bit drunk, but he keeps himself on his feet. And he's called Ishmael, and I dug into that, said, why are you called Ishmael? He said his mom chose it because it was a name in the Bible that nobody is using, and that's because of the history. They want the people of Ishak, but they reject or don't like the people of Ishmael, even though the Old Testament says that he's also the son of Abraham, and he will get a big kingdom, and he will have great followers and riches. So they were both promised big lands, and God's grace. They were part of Abraham's, but these names aren't like they are more spread in the Arabic countries, who has taken up Ishmael as a guy who came to them from a non-Arabic tribe and took him in. So Ishmael was the name of the Arabic forefather that I've read about, and we all respect, and he's the forefather of the Arabs in the religious way, like not the old ways. And I was surprised to find an Ishmael up there, and we know also Ishmael is also one of the Jules. What is he called? He's the guy with Jules Verne, the captain Nemo. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So the name is not so strange, but it's not so used. So I found actually an Ishmael up there, as well as I found Isaac and Jacob and Jonas and Job and all these other Old and Old Testamentally known names. Yeah, well, that was a small account from Greenland, and the food and the taste of everything. And what can I say? I became part of it, especially after 2014 when I went back and stayed for 5 years with a small break, then 2 years, then 4 years, 9 years from 2014 with small breaks in between. That was the longest one, and I lived in Julianehop at that point, and I got back to the same school, but then got a position in the municipality and worked there for 5 years, and really got to know new sides of society in another way and from another angle, because I was working with things I didn't work with at the school. And I also met politicians and local leaders, and heard old histories, and became friends with many nice people at that time. Many stories, many funny ones, and many special occasions. And it was just a big cultural travel in Greenland, and it will always be part of me, and still. And who knows what the future brings? If I'm gonna, at one point I thought I'm gonna die there, and I told them, if I die, I don't care about being buried in a certain way. You don't have to think about it. Just put a sign, a stone, or something that shows that I'm buried, and just put me in the earth and in somewhere where there is ice. And I can maybe just rest there, and that would have been beautiful, like to to be resting in such a place so far away where I have had one third of my life and many effects of my life being formed and shaped in that area and country. Some of the sides of the Greenlandic people is they can be complicated sometimes. They can be very, very easygoing and very straightforward, but sometimes they can shift. And I've met that especially in women and girls. They can be in one way, and then they can be in another way, very, very differently, and that can affect them a lot. But I also met that in men. They can suddenly have this inner storm. It's like it's bad weather in there. You can just feel it. And we started talking about some of these persons. Say, well, he has bad weather these days. Just leave him alone. So they can have these strange occasions of not being totally in touch with themselves and reality in a way, and that's very normal. I think I also had these days and these times. When you live there long enough, you become part of that. And sometimes I could also feel that some of them had this, what can you say, anti-white and anti-Danish relation. So, and they think everybody is there to take their jobs, and they should be the ones who are sitting on these jobs, and that's very natural. They are the people who has to run the society. But that's also a problem: the quality of the work, the quality of the education, do we have enough people? That's three main issues that it's difficult to talk about with the Greenlanders, because they will maybe react to it, and they will think that you are against them and say that, listen, what's the quality of these people that's taking over these positions, and do they have enough qualifications? And sometimes it's also a problem that people don't show up on Fridays and are off on Mondays because they have headaches. So the long weekends has also become a well-known trait up there. And now the drug problem is really melting my heart. And I felt it more and more during the last years, that it has been a grown problem over the years, the drug smuggling. In one way, some people want to enrich themselves. Of course, they live in a kind of poverty. It's not easy to get rich in Greenland. There are not big opportunities. That's why 1/3 of our Greenlanders have left the country to live in the United States, Canada, Denmark, and another European country. They are actually, as I said before, a nation and a people that's widespread all over the world, and they have also opened up for cultural intermarriages and intercourse with people from other places of the world. So you can see a Greenlander whose dad is half Algerian, half French, and you are a granddad, and you can find a Greenlander who is half African or Turkish, or like in my case, half Lebanese, and that's half Danish, half Lebanese, half I don't know what, Vietnamese, Chinese. You have really over 40 nationalities of people living there, but just in small numbers, of course, and people who are married or have connection with the Greenlanders. So they have been very open-minded also towards people from other places, but at the same time they're pushing back, like, you're taking my job, feeling kind of a way. And especially the Danes get this attitude, and it can be harsh. I met one Dane when I worked in Narsarsuaq, and he was almost crying. He was leaving Greenland for Denmark, and he came by the airport strip. I was out walking, and I invited him to the school where I was like kind of a principal, daily leader, and he started talking, and he said it was a very bad experience. They just kept me feel bad, and they ignored me and isolated me, and I couldn't be part of discussions, and anything I said or tried to do was like Danish superiority and racism against them, and I couldn't work like that. So he left his work after 5 or 6 months, where he tried, and he just felt that he felt like he was being harassed just because he was Danish. And I think there are several others who has this experience over time, because they are like fighting back in their own way, and they're saying, well, that's what my grandparents experienced. When you Danish people were the majority up here, you could isolate us and speak without us and do things without us, and maybe that's a way of showing we're taking our country or our society back. That's how it is. It's a fight. I'm not saying it's just or it's right or that's how it should be, and I felt sorry for that man, but I can also relate to the Greenlanders who've been for many decades maybe feeling the same and maybe worse for some of them. And so to look deep into what happened during the last 50 years is very important. And that's happening now, where we have the American president and his people looking into Greenland and wanting to have it, and that's making the Greenlanders more important, and making the Danes also more willing um, to understand them and give them more time to grow. At the same time, the Danes haven't been all that bad. I must also say that. I've said that in Greenland too. If you look at other colonizers around the world, how they treated people, look at the United States and how they treated the Indians, look at the French and how they treated some of the African minorities on the islands. History is filled of that. The Dutch and the British in India and other places. Uh, that was total colonizer superiority, and the Danes had always had this sympathy and feeling and understanding for the Greenlanders, and it has grown. The Danish queen is very fond of Greenland, and that makes also an impact on the Danish people and how they should treat them and respect them. And I can say, if it wasn't for Denmark, they would never have got the Greenlandic would never have got the language, because Denmark could have just kept on suppressing the language and forbidding it until almost the last Greenlander has forgot it, and it became in the archives. It was very easy that it could have been lost, but there was a movement in Denmark that supported the Danish, the Greenlandic language and culture, and not to get it lost, not so it doesn't get lost. And the translation of the Bible into Greenlandic, it was all by support of Denmark and the help of Denmark. And so grew the Greenlandic language once again, and flourished and became part of everything and the basic for everything. And the same with the practices, like uh, the clothes and the way of living and all that. And that's why also the Greenlanders have to also look um, more nuanced on that. And that's difficult when you are in a time of struggle for or against, and you want to push someone back and out. There is always a tendency to look at the negative side, not at the whole side. And that's a process that every nation who wants independence has gone through, that they want to see the occupiers in a negative side, that they were the suppressors, the bad people, and we want them out. The dilemma is, well, they want them out, but who are they going to get instead? And that's a big dilemma, because if they're going to get the Americans, would they be treating them better? Would they have these 300 years to relate to? Would they be able to understand? And the Greenlanders are married into Danish families. The Danish are married into Greenlandic families. They are very big and good and deep relations, and that would be all like cut over. And then we're going to relate to the Americans, who will look at them as new Indians who are just emerged, and they will just be friendly to them until they get the resources or get to the resources, and then they will, in the dark and shadow, treat them more and more bad, that they will scream and they will react and they will criticize, and who will come to the rescue at that point? It's the biggest empire who's taking over, and they will be lost under that. I think some of the Greenlanders are thinking along these lines and understands the impact of that as well. But they also want to show that they can be independent, and they are not Danish at the same time. They are Greenlandic, and they want relations with Denmark and other countries, but not being under it or part of it or being dependent on it. And that's the biggest issue for Greenland those years. How can we become independent? Can we get the minerals out? Can we support ourselves by fishing and hunting and exploring ways of farming? Can we produce enough to make trade along with other worlds? What can we do? And of course, the mining and oil and gems are the best source if they can get it out. And for that, they need the big companies with big capital, and these are only willing to invest if they can leave the pollution behind, and if they can if they can get the resources almost for free and maybe give a little bit to the local society. So it's not difficult, it's not easy. At the same time, there are other political ideas surrounding that what will happen to the Danish influence if that happens. Could they be sabotaging all these projects from Denmark? And could the United States be wanting to push Denmark out to take over? So what's going on behind the lines? We don't know that. Or is it a protection? Are the Danish just protecting the Greenlanders from getting into the hands of big companies and pollution and disturbing the environment? And that's a very, very important environment. It's the water reserves of the world we are getting close to up there. So I don't know what's going on behind the lines, but I just know that the Greenlanders have, since the Home Rule in 1979, been pushing more and more to get the posts and take over the ministries, and so they have done. And I said once to the guy, I say he reminds me, he's a Danish journalist who has been very interested in Greenland, and I think he's sent up there with a mission. And I told once my Greenlandic politicians, friends, I said, this is your Lawrence of Arabia, but with a different mission. He's not here to rescue the Arabs from the Turk. He's here to secure the Greenlanders as part of Denmark, and that's his mission. And I understand it. That's what I would have done if I was in the shoes of the Danish ministries. But could there have been something missing, like in all this, like in translation, as they say, that the Greenlanders are actually pushing to take over ministries? And I told this guy when he visited our municipality, I told him, it's like you're holding the coffee can there, and it's filled with coffee, but the ministries are being filled with that money and coffee and taken over by the Greenlanders, because they are the ones who have the right to do that. So at one point you will stop pouring the coffee, or you will say, give me back the cups. You can't, what else can you do? That's realism. Or you can give over the coffee can and say, okay, we'll give you this for free. And that's not how nations work. They don't give anything for free. They want something for something. So when Greenlanders say that Denmark is not out of charity helping Greenland, there is a big part of true in that, because it boosts the Danish identity and political role in the world, and it's a kind of giving them areas they have access to in the Arctic that's becoming more and more hot and more important. So it's not for free, but at the same time, who says that the Danes doesn't like the Greenlanders and they truly want to help them and give them that support? But as I told that guy, the Lawrence of Arabia of Greenland, and Martin, or what's his called? A very known journalist who wrote several books about the Arctic and politics there, and the Danish society. Yeah, I forgot the name. And I told him, well, you're holding the coffee can. You will even pour up the cups, and the cups are the ministries. The ministries are in the hand of the Greenlandic, or they want to take over. Social ministry, justice ministry, ministry of education, and everything. And you're still pouring the money into those ministries, and they are controlling and running it more and more. And you will either stop pouring the coffee, or you will ask to get the cups back. That means you will take over again. And he was like, didn't know what to answer. And he didn't have to answer. I was just giving him an anecdote of how things are going. And the Greenlanders are doing it very cleverly and very fine. They try to take over whenever they're ready and try to get Greenlanders in the right positions. And so today they have maybe half of the ministries in the Greenlandic hands, with Danish support and Danish academics working in there behind the lines. And I know from Greenlandic people, I know that they control a lot of things. Many of these figures that sits on top of politics and in those ministries, they don't have the confidence or the big what can you say, they cannot get through with their ideas and minds all the time. They are in the hands of who they think know better, and they being controlled into special directions We know that, even though people don't talk about it and don't say it enough. And some of them are trying to push in a different direction but doesn't get luck to do that, so they have to just accept reality, because whoever is pouring the coffee, giving the money, has a lot to say. That's very natural. And again, I have to say that Denmark is not that bad as they look. They are they are very much infiltrated with the Greenlanders, and as the foreign minister of Denmark wrote in his biography, when he met that exact guy I talked about before, with that party that's very national and against Denmark, and he met him in a boat where they were going to Kataswak Island, and he told him, "We are in the same boat together." And he said, "Yeah, we have to stick together. We are in the same boat." And so they are. And so I think there is an understanding, a culture, something that just makes them find things out together. But right now it's turbulent times. Things can go in many directions, and I'm excited on behalf of Greenland and hope for the best. And I actually predicted the Trump phenomena in my book Asan Okuna #2, where I write about an American guy, very, very rich, who's coming to take a walk in Greenland, and he needs a guide, and then they choose Asan Okuna to help him on the road. He has to walk for many miles. He wants to experience the nature, and then they find out during the way that someone wants to kill him, and that's his opponents. His wife is behind it, and some friend from Greenlandic society, because he wants to buy Greenland and disturb the nature and culture and take over and make it buildings and make it a trademark. And so the story unfolds in a very simple way. It's made for kids, and I actually predicted this area when I wrote the books in 2018-19. We already had the first Trump period at that time, and I cannot stand Trump. What would you do if you were a tradesman and you can see your opportunity to take over a place where you can become even more rich and let your company work there? You will try to fight to get it and fight to push the others out. So that's how the world works in a realistic view, and we have to be realistic at this point. So what are the Greenlanders going to do, and what are they going to choose? That's a big question. What I would choose is to stay and keep the tight ropes with Denmark, stay in the same boat with other ways, but use these opportunities to get more and more influence and take over. And maybe make some agreements that we get part of this money just as a way of showing the good relations with Greenland, without anything in return, without commitments, and without necessarily having the Danes controlling everything behind the lines. I can open up to other people around the world. That's what I would do if I was the Greenlandic politician, sitting behind the desk and trying to figure a way out. And I will be very friendly to the United States, but do what I can to stay close to Denmark and say that we are related for 300 years or more, and we understand each other in ways you don't. And we know that you could have a lot of interest of using our country without securing us enough. And who would secure us from you? Who would secure us from the biggest power on earth if we get under your rule and relation? And so in a way, push not to get under that influence, even though they have been like throwing $100 on the streets to people and offering free meals. What is that cheap trick? And how can people fall for that? But of course, it's always easy to find one or two who are related to these thoughts and maybe understand it in a very certain way. And that's what's going to happen now. There's going to be this trouble. But I think in the end it will bring Greenland closer to Denmark. And my experience with Denmark is that Denmark gets what it wants. I'm speaking politically. I'm part of Denmark, but I'm just a simple citizen. But politically, Denmark is very cunning and clever at getting what it wants, even though they seem so naive at times and seem out of the track. But they can get what they want, and they can keep Greenland. And events in the world will maybe lead to that, because there will be a tension between Russia and the United States at one point, and you have China at the same time. That will make an exit. But it's not sure. Maybe things can go in a very total different direction. We will have to see Even those who follow politics can't predict what's going on in these times, because nothing is so easily predictable as it was before. You could always count on politicians acting in a certain way, and that's not the case in this time. So my time with Greenland and in Greenland has been deep and memorable and hard at the same time, difficult, challenging, filled with pleasures, laughs, experiences, fresh air, sorrows, longings, um, and yeah, and at one point I got close to the edge as well, and that's a total different story. Maybe I can tell it when I talk about my psychological journey, uh, because I had an ideological journey in my first book, and the second book was a mental journey in philosophy and ideas. And what about the psychological journey? Um, so I actually failed to establish a good family up there. I really had that dream to find the right girl at one moment after I got divorced, and after some years to get the good Greenlandic and nice, just ordinary family, and live in that and start a new way of life in a way. But that failed totally, and I was very, very close to the edge, and that's heartbreaking to me. But I have very, very deep ties with Greenland and in Greenland that always will connect me and make me part of that place. And I've also at some time hoped that someone would have used my energies and used my abilities in a position of consultant, or being part of the educational consultant system. But I guess it's a clash with the Danish mentality that I won't fit into, because I'm not purely Danish thinking, and I'm not Greenlandic thinking, and the influence of the Danish academics and leaders up there would make sure to keep me out of the loop. And the Greenlandic persons I know wouldn't have the guts to go against that. That would be very difficult for them. And so I'm out of the loop, but I would love to have an impact on a new way for education. And that's the other article I wrote at that time in the newspapers. And to the newspapers, it was also a two-sided article that many people reacted positively to, saying that Greenland should look at a new way of having its education system, not importing the same industrial times education system from Denmark. They have another abilities, strengths, and ways of going around and with things that they should learn and become good at and compete with in the world. They shouldn't just copy the Danish system of these topics and sitting at the school bench every day. I would love to have an impact on that, but unfortunately many dreams just follow you out of the loop, and you stay outside everything, and you never get to do anything about it. And maybe later, and I'm going to talk about that maybe when I talk about pedagogy, and I make my thoughts clear. So basically the idea is that we shift the educational system in Greenland to fit the Greenlanders and the way they live and think, and their strengths. They have their strengths in their creativity and in their body, and some of them have it, of course, in the brain and minds, and they should be nourished and put into special schools so they can become the doctors and engineers and professors that they need, and that we need in Greenland as well. But most of the students and pupils should have another type of education that's more focused on getting the sports talents more support, and the rest some practical education, so they could work in different ways of life and feel confident and get this feeling of being something for their society and themselves. And that education system should shift and get teachers also not only from Denmark, these nuts or these politically isolated cases, or these people who comes there to favor themselves and get the big positions and keep looking down at the Greenlandic people. They should also get teachers from other places of the world. Listen, I'm not saying at all that all teachers who came to Denmark are like that. I am friend with I'm half Danish myself, and I'm friend with a lot of Danish teachers who love the Greenlanders and respect them and work with them and not against them and doesn't look down at them. But I have also seen the other types. I can tell you they are there as well, and sometimes they get higher and higher into the posts. And I know they don't like that society and the Greenlanders, and they're just using it. Like nobody is doing anything about it. So they have to open up and get their experiences from other places of the world, all the way from India maybe, and the Middle East and Africa, and get some other people. And by the way, mentioning Africa, one topic leads to the other, it seems. There was a guy from Africa up there I met when I came to Greenland, very, very black, and white eyes, white teeth. And I was surprised to find this guy up there, but I'm not a stranger to people from the African continent, and I like them. And I saw him there and talked to him, and he's living there for a year. And once I saw him on a bicycle in the snow and ice in the winter in Kakotok. And so I said in Greenlandic, Kakka Afrikana miu sukila pok ukiami kakottomi ukiani. So an African on a bicycle in Kakotok in winter, that's something to be looked at. And I remember when I came first to Nasak, there was this doctor from Sudan called Muha, and he had the 3 stripes on each side of his face, because that's what they do to kids in his tribe down there. Some kind of old tribalistic way of cutting into the kid's face 3 lines to show that he belongs to a very honorable tribe or something like that. And he looks more scary than he should have looked, and he's black as well. And so one of my friends told me a story that once a lady went to the hospital and went through an operation, and when he or she opened her eyes and looked up at the face of this doctor as the first thing, he was standing there and with his scars and everything, she thought she was already dead and being punished in some place in hell. We had a big laugh about it. He's a very kind and nice man, they tell me, and they liked him a lot. And he's also a part of these jokes. He likes them as well, and he understands the Greenlandic humor. But it was very funny. These Greenlanders has to meet the Africans up there. One is bicycling in the winter in Julianehoop with the hills, and the other one is a doctor in the hospital who will be the first experience for people who maybe think they are between life and death. Anyhow, many experiences are not told here, many good friends, many meetings, talks, and friendships, and small quarrels at some point, but not many. And sometimes out in town, I loosened more and more up with time and tried to experience the way of life as they did it. And got a girlfriend at one point and lived with her for several times, and for some time, and was close to another as well. And yeah, I don't know what the future brings, and my heart and feelings are with these Greenlanders, and I look for them wherever I go. I ask around me, are there Greenlanders around here? So I like to meet them and know if they are living close by, or I could meet and talk to them, and I will always be part of them, and they know why, and that's it. Yeah, and that's some of my thoughts and travels from the time in Greenland, and that was it for today. That's all. Thanks, and have a good time.